Well, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We are extremely excited to be able to talk about how African art galleries are envisioning the post-COVID-19 art world. I don't know if some of you guys in the audience have seen the last art newspaper and the big title that was on there where they said that 70% galleries faces 70% income crash with the COVID and the coronavirus. They obviously had amazing data, but they didn't include Africa. So we're excited to be able to specifically talk about African art galleries envisioning the post-COVID-19 art world. To do that, I'm happy to welcome good partners and friends now of 154. So I will start with Cécile Fakhoury, which I think we got involved with first. Cécile Fakhoury has a gallery called Galerie Cécile Fakhoury in Abidjan that she opened in 2019. And we had the chance to have her in our inaugural year in 2013 of 154. And since then, I think it's 7 editions in London, 5 in New York, 3 in Marrakesh. So, and she did an amazing journey too, where she was able to open a new space in Dakar in 2018 and a showroom in Paris. I'm not really sure if it's 18 or 19, but
yeah.
Yes, and now you have this project space as well that you are sorry, my computer is burning down now, it tells me, so I hope it's not going to crush, not going to crush down. So it's exciting to have you here to discuss, how you're envisioning the post-lockdown. We have Rakeb and Masai that are on the call. I have the surprise guest of having both of them tonight, which is amazing. Same thing, you have opened your gallery in 2016 in Addis, and you have worked with our third speaker as well in co-sharing the space in London with Ayo and TAFETA as well. So you've been in between Addis and have some presence in London. I don't know if it's still up to date, but you were also supposed to open and expand the space with the Cromwell space in May. I don't know if this is still in the news or not, but this is where we left you guys before the corona virus. So it's nice to have you also to give us also your feeling about how this post-lockdown is going to happen for all of us. And finally, we have Ayo with TAFETA that I've met probably even before all of you guys because he's based in London. So as much as he started the fair in 2016 as well with New York, I think we bumped into each other quite a lot between 2011 and 2016 in different events that we were all both going to quite often. So I think, we all know that it's been a terrible crisis, and we seen the number in the art newspaper today. I mean, some are devastating number where they said, I think 34% of the galleries might not survive this crisis. But I really wanted us to maybe focus and talk about, as we are all coming out of the lockdown, hopefully soon, what are we, planning and what are we doing? And I think that will be more interesting in terms of talking about the near future rather than what, has happened. However, I think my first question, and I will go maybe with Ayo on this one, is I know that we've done a lot of different strategies and crazy online viewing since we obviously been in crisis. But I wanted you to tell us a bit about what you came up with, during the COVID, as your strategy, the 6, is it called 646 or 6x6? 646 that we're able
646, yes.
That we're able to read in the Financial Times while I was locked down. So can you tell us how it came about, and if it's something or a model that you're thinking of continuing, in the near future?
Thanks, Touria, and again, very good to see all of you, especially safe and healthy. Yes, of course, it's something we came about during the crisis, but it's something we've always thought about, or we've probably done in prior states anyway, because in many situations, I've left works with collectors that I know very well and said, just think about it, let me know, and we'll talk about things, down the line. So during these times, I think I just got tired. And my gallery manager and I, Elodie, we got tired of sending those emails that go, oh, we hope you're safe and well during this stressful times or these unprecedented times. Slightly a back step and said, okay, how do we keep engaged? How do we stay engaged? How do we keep our artists in production? How do we stay close to the collectors? Why don't you try 6 for 6? We send you the piece, you live with it for 6 weeks, you know, enjoy the piece, you know, no obligations to buy whatsoever. And if you do decide to buy, because we know these are going to be difficult times going forward as well, there's a payment plan across 6 months for you to actually, you know, pay for the piece. So we started that just before the 1st of May, and it's been very well received. Obviously, like you said, we've got good press on the back of that, but we've since sent out about 10 to 12 pieces. Well, and as long as the conversion rate is healthy, you know, you'll make up for some of the devastating sales drop we had in April.
Yeah, I mean, they're talking about the UK, you know, having a 70, I think 70% drop in terms of commercial activities, you know, for the galleries in the UK. So I can imagine, you know, we're going through a tough time, and that might be a solution that you might use, you know, in post-lockdown as well, you know, in terms of getting people more probably motivated to buy and try the piece, and maybe it's something.
It's been called a try before you buy scheme, which is probably the best way to describe it, and definitely we keep that going forward. It's worked well for bringing just the, you know, the people that were just on the cusp of buying. It helps to push them over the edge. Yes. It's very good for the younger collectors as well, because they like the payment plan element of it. So, you know, it's not new. I'm not claiming to be some kind of super genius in this. It's just a rebranded try before you buy scheme that goes as far back as maybe Duveen in the, you know, post-war period. But, you know, it works for this period and we're making it work.
Okay, fantastic. And Rakeb and Masai, I know that like you had 2 fairs that were canceled, you know, since we started, and you're probably the first one who really had try this online viewing room with Frieze. First of all, congratulations to have been accepted to Frieze. But you had more experience than all of us with this online preview. We had to do one with the fair in May. But I wanted to understand from you if you already had, you know, some understanding of those online sales, and, you know, what has worked, you know, if the online is a strategy that you see continuing in the future, you know, with fair as a complement, but even maybe by yourselves as well, you know, developing maybe an online viewing room for your website, you know.
Yeah, go ahead.
So thank you, Touria, for inviting us onto this call. So I think, first of all, we've always had an online strategy, because being a gallery that opened in a very obscure place like Addis, we've always had a strong online presence with our website, on Instagram. I mean, I think we opened our Instagram account before even the gallery was open. So an online strategy has always been really important to us. And actually, luckily, in September, we actually upgraded everything. We upgraded our website, we got our online viewing room in September. So in a way, we were ready for this, even though we weren't preparing for the situation. We still had a really strong crutch online to kind of reach as many people as possible. Maybe not for sales per se, like it now is, but certainly for promotion and for, you know, for reach. We've always looked at our online strategy to give us that. And you're right, I think doing Frieze for the first time kind of on their online viewing room. Sorry, we've just got some issues here.
No, we hear you.
We hear you too.
So doing Frieze was like a really good exercise for us, because it really helped us kind of cut our teeth in terms of all of the tools that we needed to actually convert sales. You know, so we need all of the kind of the videos we had to do, the little clips of the artist talking about his work, the digital viewing, you know, the viewing pictures that we had to make. So for us, it was a good test of our platform. And I think this is something that will just continue. I think every fair will have this as a complement now. All of these tools that are being developed I think different tools are being developed at the moment, but potentially, in the future, one might be better than the other, and everybody will adopt it, and it will just be something that we all have to do, similar to what Artsy has always been part and parcel of the offering. So yeah, we've kind of embraced it. We're going for it, and we're just learning better ways of converting sales and just on the digital.
And that's really the challenge, because selling our work online is, I'm sure everybody here knows, it's not easy. It's there has to be some experience for the buyer by being there, looking at the artwork. There's an emotional connection, and seeing it online does not always translate well, but this is where we are today, and I think we have to embrace it and keep working at it. But
you're touching, I mean, and this is something I'm very interested about is like, do you think that this online is touching a new audience of younger collector group, for example, or do you think because often contemporary art from the continent is considered more accessible, is it like something that you feel is an advantage in an online, situation where maybe the artist is less known, but because it's more accessible and the prices are more competitive, then people are more willing to actually acquire the pieces online than they would be for a piece that is more expensive?
I think it works two ways. I think, yes, there is a reach scenario. So like for our Freeze booth, for example, the digital booth, I think we had a lot more diverse conversations and in-depth conversations about the artwork compared to when we were, say, at Armory in the booth, because it's so frantic. However, people had never seen this art before. So a lot of the people that were really interested in it were hesitant, even though it was kind of a lower price point compared to the blue chips. I think the blue chips did incredibly well on the Freeze platform. I think first day, $5 million was sold on the first day. So still they dominate, but I think it's because people will buy what they've already seen or what they know. So for us younger galleries and for artists that are less known, I think that kind of impulsive buying atmosphere when you're at a fair and somebody walks into the booth and just falls in love. So I think that was what was missing. However, we've had really good conversations that may lead to a more in-depth knowledge by the collector about that particular artist, and maybe in the future that might lead to kind of a buyer or a collector that would be really interested or buy deeper into the artist's career. But I think it's both ways. It's not. I don't think it's clear cut. I think it's still being tested. I think it. Yeah.
Yeah. So Cécile, I know we had a chat, not long before this session, and you mentioned you reminded me of a fact that, I kind of forgot, but like having this chat with you you told me something very interesting that as a gallery based on the continent, you already have this tendency to sell a lot on PDF and using, emails rather than, having people coming to the spaces. Some of your collectors now are people that you are in contact with by email. You usually send their PDF. Do you think that this is something that you saw accelerating in this 2 months, and that might be more, the way of selling of tomorrow? And I know we've talked about, your feeling about art fairs now and how, you want to nurture, more new artists. And so what is your strategy? I mean, in the next coming month, are you more going online? Are you continuing doing what you're doing with the PDF?
Actually, as Rakeb, it's all that new method that we use now, like during the COVID, it was already in our mind and already in the pipeline before the COVID, like maybe this crisis like speed up a little bit the process. We worked a lot on digital, like all kind of tools during these 2 last months, but it's something like, of course, we are far, like a lot of our collector will not be able to come to see our gallery. So something like virtual tour is very like important for us to to be able to show what we are what we are doing here. But buying, selling with digital tools is great, but and this crisis make it very clear, like we have to improve that. This is our idea, but now it's more than clear. We're going to work this area, you know. But after I really see the digital version of the gallery like an extension of what we are doing physically, I want to be very demanding with the digital subject, you know, like, and the COVID make me realize that it's a lot of work, you know, like creating like digital material to be able to communicate digitally regularly with a relevant content. It's a lot of work. So today we're able to do it because we have time. Maybe when it's everything's go back in track, we will see how we can arrange time. But it's a great thing. It's like a all new field, you know. Yeah. But of course, you know me, Touria, and I'm gonna do digital because it was my idea. Like when I developed 2 years ago the gallery with Dakar with a bigger team, I put money in digital, in communication. It was like very clear. But of course, I'm gonna keep it with my spaces and my gallery because I think I really see digital with like an extension of what we are doing physically.
Yeah. And like, do you have different strategy? Because obviously you have a presence in Europe and 2 spaces in Africa. Like, do you see your strategy being different from one continent to the other, or you think you might do the same thing in all your spaces and the way you develop?
Actually, since the beginning, it's not the same kind of spaces because in Paris, I don't have a gallery. I have offices and showroom. I'm not doing exhibitions, so it's not the same kind of work. And I really want to make the difference because a website is not a gallery and an offices and a showroom is not a gallery. So it's not the same strategy. Like Paris existing because Dakar and Abidjan are
yeah. Well, that's interesting. And Rakeb, like, just to come back to you guys with Addis, like, and your presence in London, are you thinking strategy differently on how you do things in Addis and how you will, you know, continue doing things maybe with your presence in the UK?
I mean, the Cromwell Place space will, you know, we will have our full exhibition program in that space. And the idea was, you know, since collaborating with Ayo, you know, Ayo space was really more of a test space for us. You know, it was a project space. It was somewhere where people that couldn't come to Addis could come and just say hello and see a couple of things. So similar to what Cécile was just saying about a showroom. But now we just want to expand our exhibition program like in earnest in London and in Cromwell Place whenever, you know, we're able to open. But I think in terms of the brand and in terms of kind of the digital tools that we're going to use and how each exhibition is going to be executed, I think it's going to be exactly the same for both of our spaces, because I think that, as Cécile said, that digital is an extension of our gallery program. And, you know, London is also an extension of kind of the core program that we have in Addis. So we see it as more holistic. It's all kind of complementary to each other.
Yeah. So Ayo, I'm going to come to you with this first question, and I want to hear the opinion of everyone on this one. But because when I invited you to the call, you know, you texted me and said, you know, can we be honest? I might not do fair this year, you know, and do you still want me on the panel, etc. Actually, I wanted you even more because I wanted to understand, you know, what are your plans for 2021? And obviously, if you're not doing art fairs, you know, what are you going to do? Obviously, there's going to be this online competition, but I was very keen on hearing, you know, how do you think, you know, this will impact your participation on art fairs in general, obviously, but what would you do in exchange of art fairs maybe, or what can you do, you know, obviously art fairs are allowed because this is the big mystery of 2020.
Yes.
I guess the answer to the question you asked was specific, or what the statements I made was specifically for this year, 2020. And that's just because of the general uncertainty. I mean, none of us know what's going to happen. It's very hard to plan forward in any scenario whatsoever. This is my first pandemic. So I actually have no data around, what's happened before and what's going to happen going forward. So yeah, 2020 might be on hold, but yes, we do plan to have an active fair program in 2021. But even saying that, I think even before COVID, there was a lot of discussions around how many fairs is sustainable, how much traveling I was doing as a small gallery. As a small gallerist, you have to be at your fairs, right? Because you're the one that is, the sales fall on you. So I was doing way too much traveling to sustain personally anyway. So there was going to be a reduction in the number of fairs. So going forward, it just has to be more strategic. We plan to invest in select fairs. We want to have a touch point on every continent. That's an active collector base. So we'll do a fair in the States, we'll do one in Europe, of course. London is home, so that probably stays the same. But we want to do something in Asia as well. So that's at least 4, right? Apologies to, I might not be able to do anything in Latin America or Australasia, but maybe there's no audience for that. And Africa, of course. I will still do a fair.
It was interesting on the last session because, obviously we all don't know, but there might be a possibility of doing fairs that are more local based, so for example, gathering all the galleries in London, having a presence in London and developing that locality, or for, Lagos, for them to be more, concentrated during this 2020 on the Nigerian, galleries, because they'll be allowed to be there and physically, maybe nurture more the local collector base, in some of the cases where you can, I feel it's difficult when you have a galleries, in Africa, and that a large percentage is actually being sold outside Africa, to think of local markets. But maybe it's time to, we all say that we need a stronger collector base on the continent.
Can I speak to that? Because for me, it's kind of a unique situation. Yes, you're right. 646 is a UK only initiative. So that's more targeted towards a UK audience. But I've run my gallery in central London for about going on 7-8 years now. And a significant collector base for me is in Africa. In fact, nearly 60% of my collectors are in the continent of Africa. So, right, even I could desperately try and super enhance my local collector base, but I need those guys. So it's not just a fair program, of course. There's lots of emails, there's lots of PDFs being sent, there are lots of whales that back you, whatever the season. You have to keep engaged. You have to stay close to those people. And that goes for a lot of the collectors I have in the States as well, or some in mainland Europe. The fairs you might not be able to get to them through the fairs, but you still have to find a way to get to them. Yeah. And I think this model works for different gallery. I can't speak for Rakeb or Cécile, but for me, I have to be very, very sensitive about being too hyper-local.
And how about you, Cécile? Do you see that there's a way to maybe engage more your local audience with the gallery, while, this, we're going through this where you might be, I was talking to a gallery in Paris, for example. She was telling me, we've been, kind of neglecting our French collector base because we've been all over the world with art fairs, and meeting great collectors as well, but not really engaging anymore with, our first round of collectors were around the galleries who could buy, during this time of crisis and who are actually allowed to come to the gallery. Do you think this is something that you can engage more during the next, few weeks, until the end of the year, maybe?
Yes, I hope. Actually, for me, like Touria, that I was already keen to do a little bit less art fair. And for me, the idea is doing art fair on the continent, because it's also this idea to maybe to bring all the African collector to those art fair, for me, I need to be there. I cannot do this job here and not being like in this different kind of art fair. So yeah, it's I hope it's gonna be at one point. I don't know. Actually, it's hard to say. It's hard to say.
We project, and then we.
Yeah, sometimes but I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, and Rakeb and Masai, I heard that you're planning an expansion of the gallery in Addis. Is that true? Is it something that was planned to happen during this period, or?
well,
not during this period, no, but
no, but
it's been accelerated, shall we say?
and we have the luxury of time on our side now, to do this. Obviously, we planned on this way back when, because we find ourselves to be like in a very unique position here in Ethiopia. More or less, we're like kind of the first gallery to do this. So it's always been, yes, we have our space now, but we want to add so much to it. Meaning that, just not a gallery space, more of a cultural space for the city. So it's very ambitious. It's a big plan. There's many ways of thinking of doing this. But the thing is, I just want to add that, Addis is a bit unique city compared to, other African cities in terms of, the kind of collectors that we have. We don't have similar experiences like a lot of the other African countries. So the culture of collecting has been, very small here, to be honest with you, simply because, the way art was cultivated in the rest of Africa it's not the same, especially contemporary art. Yes, we have an amazing past, but to build on it and do what we're doing is extremely challenging because we have a very small collector base in Addis. So, the challenge becomes, okay, we have this here in Addis, but we luckily have the space in London, which allows us, to do what we do here in Addis, because it's really important for us to be here and nurture the community and grow it, so that we become just as Ayo City or Cecile's, these other African cities offer quite more than we do. But that's what we want to change. That's what the aim is in expanding the space here. And there's a lot of things that we will be doing here, and we want it to be not only just for Ethiopia, but we want it to be a little bit more engaged, with our neighbors. So it's ambitious. It's going to take a lot of money. And it's the best time to do that, to be honest with you, because we have tons of time to do that now.
To do it. We've seen a lot of collaborative projects with galleries, in the US, for example, with David Zwiener, a platform project, or Jeffrey Deitch and Gagosian and the LA, project. Is there like any project like this that, you talked about within you galleries from the continent, or that you could think of, during this period, or things that you might be willing to do to share space or to do things, that could be helpful post lockdown?
I mean, I think the kind of the collaborative spirit has always been there for us, because again, young gallery from an obscure place, we've always had these collaborative ideas and models. We've collaborated with Ayo. I see Danda on the call. We've done collaborative projects with Danda, sharing booths, things like that. So these are kind of part of how we came up to where we are. So we've been open to every type of collaboration. But in terms of an online kind of community, is something that even Cromwell Place is thinking about, building an online presence for that community of galleries that might be in that space. But something Pan-African hasn't really been tabled, not that I've heard, but if there, it's something that would be considered, and it's and this collaborative approach is something that we've always had with our colleagues across the continent and across Europe as well, since we're kind of partly based in Europe.
I know that during our last chat with Cécile, we talked about, if there was no fair, what could we do? And one of the idea was like, if 154 was not happening physically in London, or anytime soon, that we could, as a fair, as a gathering, a group, try to do a parcours, of the galleries, and focus on the galleries. In this case, more in London, and then maybe in Paris, at a time. But like try to push people to the galleries rather than to the fair. In exchange of our past relationships, and the fact that there's not one space to do a fair. But do you like the idea rather than I was just trying to find solutions, in terms of not having a physical space, one where everybody's here, but maybe organize like we do in Marrakesh, because we're able to do it in Marrakesh, and to create events a bit everywhere in the city, and it makes people meet one. But that's also one big question mark is how many people can there be in one time, even at a gallery. We're talking 50, 20, 30, but doing some more intimate events around the city.
Touria, right? Yes.
Touria, yes.
Lost you, Touria.
Oh, you lost me. I see you so well.
You're back.
You're back.
So where did you lose me? No, I was saying
Trying
like
to pitch a new 154.
Sorry?
You're pitching a new 154. Please carry on.
Well, it was more collaborative 154 during a non-154 situation, but trying to get the galleries together to actually do a parcours rather than having them in one space. So obviously it's local based. It can be in London, in Paris, or places where we have enough galleries to actually do it. But it could be an idea.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I think it makes sense. It's very similar to the Asian Art Week, for example, that happens fairly regularly in London.
Yeah.
So as long as we have an umbrella body that could coordinate it. Obviously, this is also subject to all sorts of regulations around how many people can actually be in the physical space at the same time. But yeah, if you're driving, we know it'll be well executed. Let us know.
So Cécile, I have a question for you, because I know that we're talking, maybe not having a fair, galleries being in trouble, but like one of the roles of the galleries is actually nurturing, young talent. And obviously you've opened the space, the project space that you have, and what are your plans for this, post lockdown? What is going to be the role of this new space?
Actually, this space, like I integrated this space like 2 days before the lockdown, so it was a shame. But the space is here. It's dedicated to the very young creation. It's right in front of the main gallery, but it's gonna be like very young for very young artists. Actually, when I opened my gallery in 2002, I showed very young artists, and then we all grew up together. And like it's been like 2-3 years that like things going, and my economic model is very demanding, and I'm not able to show like to dedicate like one month, 2 months to a very young artist who were with very low cost. So it's been like a while that I hoping to open this kind of project space, actually, like to be really able to promote a very young generation of artists, and giving them the opportunity to exhibit, like, because it's one of our main issues here. It's the lack of exhibition space. So this is the main goal, like walls and where we can show exhibition like of young artists. And I'm sure that it's gonna be it's very new. It's open 2 days and shut down. So, but I'm sure it's gonna be a wonderful tools for promotion of young artists.
Yeah. So maybe this is more for Addis Fine Art and Rakeb and Masai, like, because with this online model, we experienced it at 154, but I wanted to know if this is something that you experience as well, is that more things are online, more we have collectors able to reach out to artists as well. And we had an experience where, we had a collector, an art advisor going straight to the artist themselves, and proposing in a way to play a bit the role of the gallery, taking 50%, or 40%, and basically skipping this whole, gallery artist, relationship. Have you experienced any of that with the more exposure online? And do you think it's a model that might make you rethink also the model of the gallery?
I think we've been quite lucky with our artists, because I think the way that we've kind of set up the gallery was to do something more than just promote the artist. It's really about a collective art history that needs to kind of come up together. So a lot of the artists that we have signed and are working regularly with are extremely loyal, and it's kind of like a partnership that has grown up together, similar to what Cécile is saying, and we hope that that will continue. But I think with the online thing, we have to be careful, because art has always been sold online. There's like art supermarkets that for really, really kind of low end art. And I think that for this, for what we're trying to do, we need to be very mindful at that we don't get to a space where we're kind of joining that type of art. We still need to kind of create more than just an ability for art, for buyers to just see art on their platform. But we also had a booklet, a digital booklet. We had little videos of every single piece of artwork. We had a description of the art by the artist. So like there were so many different ways that we were communicating with our audience. So I think that there has to be kind of a value-added scenario, even if we're online. It can't just be, okay, this, here is the art and there's like it's like a shopping cart. It can't be that way, because there is like a section of art that is sold that way, and it's not. We have to differentiate ourselves from that.
Yeah, no, but also some artists have organized, and I think maybe it's due to the crisis. Some sells themselves directly online or things like that. So I mean, it's not always also an art advisor pitching, but we've seen models where they had to also organize themselves online to do some stuff. So but I'm just like thinking of trends that can stay post COVID-19 that might be also a way of rethinking models. But this is also something.
I mean, I think that we need. Sorry, I think the exhibition. I mean, post-COVID, the exhibition programs will come back. I mean, we have to have artists are going to still need gallery space, similar to what Cécile said. Gallery space to show curated shows, to kind of build on their repertoire as in terms of exhibitions, and so that relationship still stands true. Whether artists, if the online tools are there, I don't think it's going to change necessarily the gallery artist relationship, because I think both sides are extremely important. Of course, there will be some artists that will sell direct. They already do. A lot of artists sell from studios, from PDFs and all that. So that I don't think it's going to change that much.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was also going to say that. I was also going to mention that artists have always sold directly online. If you're not represented as an artist and you've got an Instagram account and someone reaches out to you from Chicago, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that situation. I mean, I've bought from artists that way before. I think as galleries, you also have to remember that there's not enough representation for artists, especially on the continent.
Yeah.
There are just not enough galleries. So we've worked in parallel with this situation, and I think it's going to continue after the crisis. There are opportunities out there now for people to engage directly. Why wouldn't an artist take that?
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing that I want to add is, just to refer back to your questions about I think I sensed the concern, that you had with, artists maybe working directly with, with collectors, even though they're represented, by galleries. I think, like in our case, the artists that are working with us, they've worked with us for the last 5 years, but we've known them for a very, very long time. And so 20 years relationship. So there's the loyalty, but also more importantly, the fact that, we have enabled, most of our artists, to have done really, really, really well. So, the idea of maybe I can do this on my own, at least when it comes to us, it's going to be a bit difficult. to be honest with you.
So continuing on that train of thoughts, did you see any artists being impacted in the way they produce their work with this particular crisis? Are they exploring new media, or are they doing things differently, or to fit more the online, sales, for example? Is there something that they do differently, or you see them developed in the past 2 months? Maybe we'll go back to Cécile or to Ayo on this.
Actually, like for my artist, it's very physical, So this question, it's maybe they can think about it, but it's too material. It's too physical. So it's not easy to in 2 months to rethink like the way of experiencing, of way of doing, of no, and of course we need to I take time to be sure that all the artists was able to work during this crisis, like they had materials and everything. Sometimes it was not able to find the right material, so it become like something else, and like it's not that it's not obvious for my artist. Actually, it's too way too linked to materials.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I've noticed directly is artists being more open to opening up their studios. There's actually lots of videos out there now about artists that I didn't never thought you could actually get access to their studios. Running a live programming of what they're doing at the moment. In terms of shifts to things like, because I read a New York Times article about time-based media being more suitable to the online space. I could speak for Nigeria. Electrical power is a very scarce resource.
Yes.
There's not going to be any shift to time-based
Internet.
So, painting will still reign. Sculptures are traditionally what they collect. We have, there's not going to be a dramatic shift.
Yeah.
Maybe after the crisis, things miraculously might be different.
Okay, so I want to wrap up our questions because last time we didn't have enough time to go through the questions of the audience, and we have some very good ones here. So I'm gonna, throw them at you guys, and hopefully you have answers for this. So we have Joseph Vaskovitz, who's been quite a big supporter of 154 of art from the continent, from Seattle, who's also, I think, a patron of the Seattle Art Museum. He says galleries, art fairs, and some artists have done extremely well in leveraging the internet to show and even sell artworks. We've spent all the effort on the front end of the process, but very little on the back end, getting the artworks to the clients. Isn't it time the continent looked for a way to make the purchase easy for collector, with either unified shipping or at least a simple online process for shipping? Who wants to try this one?
The pain of our existence. Shipping is the pain of our existence. So, I mean, absolutely. But as a small gallery like ours, that's just a leap too far. We just do the best we can in terms of shipping. I think that's the only thing I could say about.
Yeah, we've seen in the fair, at least, in the past, when an art collector, have have bought from a specific gallery, and that the several things going to him from other galleries collaborating to ship one package to the collector. But I know when it's coming directly from the continent, it gets a bit more challenging, just because the systems and the shipping companies are quite different. So I don't know if we have a good answer for Joseph on this one.
It also depends on which part of the continent it's coming from. Africa is a big place, let's just.
But I mean, one thing that is good is DHL. I mean, if it's not
DHL works. We have some specialists for your clients. We have some specialist art shippers that work out of the continent on behalf of the auction houses. So the Bonhams, the Sotheby's, they move things out of there continuously. I'm not going to shout out their names now, but those are people that you can actually reach out to for getting things out of the continent. I've used them in the past, and it's worked very well.
Yes, but I know that shipping cost seems, and this is always something that I was always amazed by, a very
variable.
But also a very big subject on the sell. Like you might buy something quite expensive, but the shipping cost has to you know,
No,
to
this
maintain.
is the issue. This is the issue because for my part, for West Africa, we can send it like very properly. It's not really an issue, but it's a cost. So when you're selling something like not a such higher price, the shipping cost is like incurrent, you know, with the selling price. So this is the issue. This is the cost actually, not really the technical issue, you know.
And I don't
And I
really
think it's the
see
same for us as well. It's, you know, we have one or two options, and I think that's the problem. We don't have enough options from our side. We definitely don't have any people like Ayo is talking about, but it can be, you know, if somebody's buying like a really small piece for a very small amount of money, the shipping might be 50%, you know, so like that, those are the issues that we have to deal with.
So no good solution for the moment, Joseph, but we might be able to one day.
For somebody, maybe.
Okay, so Taryn and team from Art Eye Gallery, we're certainly happy with so many new young artists emerging in the African art market, but when there is a new superstar on the rise every 2 years, how does that sustain them and the market effectively? Anyone? Ayo?
That's a bit of our fault. I think it's just structures around this. Just doing this COVID alone, I did some more research. I found 3 museum exhibitions, you know, with contemporary African arts in their title, at the Institute of Contemporary Arts in London, the Camden Arts Centre, and the Otis Institute. The Otis Institute actually traveled to the Studio Museum in Harlem all before 1970. This is contemporary African art, right? We seem to go through this cycle of dropping everything every 5 years and pretending that we're starting again. I think what the question is addressing is that lack of continuity in our documentation and messaging. It's not just every 2 years we create superstars. We've created some superstars in the 60s that we just don't talk about enough in the 80s and the 90s, and some in the 90s that we don't talk about enough now. You know, and you know, Elana Tsui was a modernist artist that became a great contemporary artist and is still with us today. So I think it's more of the messaging and just paying more attention to the masters and the older artists, which is why I love what this artist does with Tadesse, for example. Yes. You know, it's a great example of
our own problem on not archiving and having enough documentation on
and then communicating that messaging more clearly. So no, it's not very, very different from it. This is why in even more international markets, you have a situation where we're discovering artists from the Art Povera period in 2007. They've been there forever. It's just a case of the messaging lacks for a while, and then we start talking about them again.
Yeah, I think to add to that, you know, once we opened the gallery and we've been here for 4 years, I think one of the biggest issues that we're coming against, especially because we're trying to not just elevate kind of the young artists from this region, because Ethiopia actually is a very old place. I mean, Africa is an old place, even in art history, is that we don't have any institutions here. I mean, I'm talking about our region here. We don't have any institutions that have written enough about our masters. We don't have anyone archiving anything from anywhere. And part of the reason for this need that we felt like we needed to expand more into an institutional direction is precisely for that. We need more publishing about our modernists and kind of the Tadesses of the world who are just behind the modernists. And of all of the young artists that are currently producing, why they're important, who's doing what and why. You know, all of these things have to be documented, as Ayo says, and distributed, more importantly. You know, we need to have, but these are all extremely expensive endeavors that are actually non-profit, you know, so they're institutional projects. So I think when Masai and I started this, we had to start somewhere. We couldn't, you know, we can't do everything simultaneously, but I think now having this time to really think about what an institution could look like from this part of the world, I mean, that is one of the biggest issues. We have to start documenting and distributing information, not just the art. Like, I think that's one of the
reasons we wanted to do always a catalog, you know, with the biographies and the references, you know, of those artists, and having in a way, a mini CV of the artist, you know, what he had already accomplished with 154 catalogs, instead of having, you know, just a presentation on the galleries, because a lot of the collectors who were already interested said that they couldn't find any information on those artists. It was quite important for them to get published, you know, and a lot of the artists tell us that it's the first time they were ever published for them in a book, you know. So I think we have a lot of work to do on this particular question. So we have another question from Roger Tucker III from Tucker Contemporary Art. How many and what percentage of contemporary African artists live and produce work in Africa versus overseas in Europe, United Kingdom, or United States? Is that number increasing? If so, why?
I don't think there's a record anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about we have like a 50-50 balance in terms of like artists who work and live in Ethiopia and who are now in the diaspora. What links all of our artists together is, I think like 80% of our artists went to the same art school here in Ethiopia. So there's that kind of, you know, when we talk about the art historical backing and the thing that we're trying to elevate kind of goes back to that. But in general, on the whole of the continent, I mean, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
No.
Sorry for this.
I think I'll hand over to Cécile with this one.
No, I have no idea about the number, but what can I say? It's for my part, I can see a lot of African artists coming back
to the continent.
On the continent. Since the beginning of the opening of the gallery, I can see like not everyone, but a lot of artists of the gallery I'm working with coming back, living and working on the continent. So they can have like another base in another country, but there is a very strong link with the continent. Yeah. And I think it's one of the very good signal for all what we're doing here on the continent. It's when artists coming back, I think it's a very, very good signal.
I have a...
It's probably a question that more archiving can probably answer anyway. So this is another thing that we need to do. It's part of data.
Yeah. But there's also a significant number of artists that left the continent, which is also very true, you know, for artists who left Ethiopia that ended up, you know, in the US and Europe that actually have pretty much sacrificed, you know, their ambitions simply because, you know, they were not able to sustain, you know, their life working in Europe or in the US. So there's a big number actually out there that, you know, no one really knows about. You know, they went to school here, they're great artists, but unfortunately
But there's also an example of people who left and obviously became very successful. I'm just wondering if an artist is based in Europe or in the US, you know, are the opportunity are the same, you know, in terms of networking or meeting the right curators and so I'm not saying we obviously don't know the data on how many there are, but we know about the successful one in the US, you know, or in Europe or but it's true that we definitely need more data on this. And every time it comes back to data, every time we don't have an answer because, you know, nobody knows, you know, the number of artists in a particular country or the economies around the art industry. And I don't know how to create more data, but every time, you know, I go on a panel, something I'm asked to provide, you know, data. And I'm like, okay, I'm not an economist. I don't have that access or statistic person to do that. But it seems that it's quite an important gap. So we have a fourth question from Edward Tyler Naham, who also have a gallery. As we continue to transition into a more virtual platform with art offering and sales, what tools are you using to bridge the gap between the traditional history of seeing a work of art in a person and the present world of having to rely on remote experiences and eventually a transaction?
There's no specific tool we've created to do this. Obviously, I'm sure I speak for not just myself, but a lot of galleries across the world. We're all taking a look at all the platform that's been offered to us. There's virtual reality, AR, everything's been presented. Every new company that has some kind of idea about this is presenting something to you as a tool. I don't know I'm using as much as I can. Most of it is trial and error. A lot of it's been dumped on the side. You know, we don't have the capacity at the moment to build anything bespokely. But keep, you know, thinking around until we come to something. But, you know, I joke around that there's nothing that's going to replace the experience of someone buying something from you after the third gin and tonic. You know, this is not something you can move online. And it's a core part of my business.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I might, you know, I hope things go back to some kind of normal.
Normal, yeah.
Right? So that we can experience art together with our collectives.
Yeah, and we cannot underestimate that the whole art scene is also large partly social, you know, like you like to meet your friends, your people sharing the same passion and all that. So we have a good last question, and I'd like everyone to give any advice and tips for a new gallery setting up on the continent.
Depends where, I guess. I think you need a lot of conviction and passion. I think that's kind of like what has sustained us, right? Because I think initially when we first opened our gallery, I think it was for the first 2 years, we had very few sales, I would say. So it kind of took, and you have to, I think, be prepared to teach everybody. You have to be able to teach the artists of how to work with a gallery system. You have to be able to be okay with teaching collectors as to why you're there and why they need to buy from you. And it's been a real kind of multi-pronged kind of education system. Has taken more than money and just a want to do it. It's taken a lot more passion and conviction to really get it over the line and to get it to this point, I think.
And don't get into it if you think you're going to make a lot of money.
Yeah,
that's just the wrong reason. You know,
there are far easier ways to making a living than doing than opening a gallery. That's for sure.
And
how about you, Cécile?
Yeah. Complaining about like lack of spaces and lack of exhibition and lack of edition. So come, please come and make. There is room. There is plenty of room in Africa. I don't know which part of Africa, which country, but if you're believing in what are you doing, it can work. It's not easy at all. But there is room, and we need, actually, I think we need more people who's doing this job, like with a good level, you know, like maybe if there is like much more gallery, we will have more data, we will have more like we will bring a bigger market and more collectors. So yes, please come. and you just have to believe in it.
Yeah. I concur with you, Cecilia. I think that, you know, one of the issues that Masai and I have faced, like now 4 years into it, is that we don't have a counterpart to do kind of part of the job. So it kind of feels like it's all falling on us in this region. So we feel like the city could use another 5 or 6, 7 galleries similar to us to really kind of service the artists that live here. You know, so I think, we're barely scratching the surface, but I think it's also incumbent upon us and you and Ayo to say, actually, it can work, and maybe younger people or people will just follow in our footsteps. I mean, we thought that would happen sooner, but it hasn't, but it will, I think, if we continue to push and to really engage the world and the local collectors here too.
So patience and passion are key.
And find great artists. Find good artists.
Good eye, a good eye.
No matter which you are, different challenges from different parts of the continent.
Yeah.
But if you
But
find
even in London, you need to find good artists. It's not just
find good artists, and that artist his star will shine globally. It doesn't matter if he never leaves the country.
Okay, well, on those positive notes, you know, we're going to leave each other for tonight. But thank you so much for joining. It was fun to see you guys. I don't know when it's... Go, Ayo, you have something to say.
No, someone actually made a comment here about an homage to Henry Vaughan.
Yes, actually, I wanted to start with this, and actually, we lost one of our dearest friends last weekend, and Henri Vergon started Afronova, was an immense, one of the person, that we can say had a great eye in discovering talents, in South Africa. He was an amazing company, art fairs. I don't think there's anybody that can say something different. He was one of the most joyous and sympathetic person of the fair, always fun, always happy to have a laugh. So it came to us as a shock. We are giving him and preparing to regroup all the words or notes you want to provide us. Send this to me, to my team. We are preparing an homage page also on our website for him and gathering all the souvenirs. So if anybody want to share any memories, we would be very happy to share with our community. And I have to say that all my sympathy and condolences go to Emily and to all the artists that they were really like a family around Henri. But I think I talk in the name of everyone and every galleries in 154 that had the chance to work with him as an amazing partner and collaborator and nurturing talent for a lot of his artists. He discovered some amazing artists that also had journeys that are unbelievable today. So you will be missed, dear friend, and I think I can say that for my team, for all the people that have worked with you.